Welcome to PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale history, where last time we looked at these guys, Jak and Daxter, and it's time to look at another similar duo, specifically Ratchet and Clank. Ratchet and Clank is Sony's longest running platformer franchise with 11 games of the series to date, and it puts you in the shoes of Ratchet, the last of the Lombax race of aliens, and his sidekick, Clank.
I always thought that you were the sidekick.
Ratchet and Clank met when Clank crash-landed on Ratchet's home planet.
Name's Ratchet. You got a name?
My serial number is V54296.
Oops. I'll just call you Clank for short.
The two forged a friendship over the course of the series, travelling across the universe and battling hordes of heavily armed robotic commandos.
When aren't they heavily armed?
The series was a combination of 3D platforming and third-person shooting, utilising a range of varied weapons. Their inclusion in PlayStation All-Stars is pretty much expected, and similar to Jak and Daxter, you primarily play as Ratchet, while Clank acts as a metallic sentient backpack. Ratchet's moves are a spread of weapons from across the original trilogy on the PS2 and the future series on the PS3. We'll be taking an in-depth look at each of them. To begin with, whenever Ratchet would enter a level, he would hop out of his ship, usually with Clank in tow. This little hop out into the level was seemingly incorporated into one of Ratchet's unlockable intros, labelled Nice.
You're quite handy with your wrench.
You bet. I built that ship with it.
The Lombax race is apparently well known for their love of mechanics, and Ratchet is no exception. As such, he carries a wrench around with him everywhere he goes, which he uses as a weapon. His default attack is a 3-hit combo, which made its way into PlayStation All-Stars rather faithfully, with pretty much the same animation that's been seen across the series. Ratchet has also always had a move known as the Hyper Strike, where he would jump into the air and slam his wrench down to the ground as he falls. This too saw a faithful translation in PlayStation All-Stars. Very good at catching enemies on the ground from the air, the Hyper Strike is a very useful move to have.
Gadgetron's OmniWrench 8000 includes a new Comet Strike feature. To activate it, use the R1 button to crouch, and then press the square button.
The Comet Strike is basically using the wrench as a boomerang. Ratchet throws the wrench out in front of him, causing it to spin. The wrench was able to cause damage both as it's sent out and when it returns to Ratchet. The All-Stars version hasn't changed the move in any way, even retaining the ability to cause damage on the way back. But there's more to Ratchet than just the wrench. The games also feature a dizzying array of weaponry of all shapes and sizes. We're going to look at them from the most sensible to the most bizarre.
Well, let's see what you've got.
One recurring part of Ratchet's arsenal has always been the classic space adventurer staple, the Blaster Pistol. First appearing in Ratchet & Clank 1 as the Blaster, Ratchet has always had very similar pistol weapons ranging through the Lancer, to the N60 Storm, to the more fire-based Combustor, until ultimately he gained the Constructo Pistol, a more customizable blaster in a crack in time. Because this weapon type is so prominent across the series, Ratchet has naturally been given one in PlayStation All-Stars, with the specific model being the Constructo Pistol on the default settings. The rate of fire has been reduced from Ratchet firing indefinitely to a maximum of 3 shots before there's a need for a cooldown. The next weapon type is the Sniper Rifle. Less common than the Blaster, the first weapon of this type was the Pulse Rifle from Going Commando, followed closely by the Flux Rifle in Up Your Arsenal. Both operated the same way, being fairly useless in normal combat, but very good at taking out enemies from a distance with its zoomable scope.
RoboNet's new Plasma Striker is the next evolution in long-range assassination. The Plasma Striker's strength comes from our patented Bioscope. The scope pinpoints vulnerable spots on any enemy, making for a more efficient kill. Just lay your crosshairs on the red indicator and bam! If it don't kill him, it'll sure give him a reason to retreat. The Plasma Striker, available only at RoboNet.
This was the version introduced in a crack in time, which had the added bonus, as the description stated, of being able to highlight weak points on an opponent. Technically, it's actually a crossbow, but it sure acts like a sniper rifle in practice. The Plasma Striker is the version that made its way into PlayStation All-Stars, offering an aimable ranged weapon to Ratchet's arsenal. Ratchet can target opponents from a distance, and even aim the weapon while in the air. Of course, no arsenal of destructive tools would be complete without a rocket launcher, and there's been one in every Ratchet game since the beginning. They all largely acted the same, from the Devastator, to the Mini Rocket Tube, to the Annihilator, to the Negotiator, and then finally, the Warmonger.
In the mood for extreme destruction? Try the Warmonger, a Terraclon rocket launcher with only one setting. Vaporize.
Even though the Warmonger visually seems to be able to fire multiple rockets at once, in practice it really only acts like a normal rocket launcher. Its use in PlayStation All-Stars demonstrates this, as Ratchet uses it to fire a single rocket into the air above him. Now let's move on to more fanciful weapons. In Up Your Arsenal you could pick up the Plasma Whip, which was a melee weapon with slightly more range than the wrench and very useful on crowds. But this was only the first electric-based whip weapon. In Tools of Destruction, you can encounter this.
The Shock Ravager uses electrical current to neutralize shielded enemies.
The Shock Ravager was a more improved plasma whip, able to target a larger group of opponents and having the ability to stun. In all games bar the first, all weapons could be leveled up into more powerful variations, and the Shock Ravager is no exception, allowing it to be upgraded into the Lightning Ravager, where the whip gets stronger and changes colour from blue to red. It's this upgraded Lightning Ravager that Ratchet has in his arsenal in PlayStation All-Stars, only he uses it in an upward motion to fling opponents into the air, and can typically be followed up with the Warmonger. The next weapon type we can talk about is the Blade Gun. The first we encounter is the Chopper in Going Commando, which shot out ninja stars, and then the Disc Blade Gun in Up Your Arsenal, and then finally the Buzz Blades, a tool for destruction. All these weapons would shoot out pointy shards of metal that would typically bounce off walls and enemies, allowing each shot to hit multiple times. The Buzz Blades make an appearance in PlayStation All-Stars. Since they act in a similar manner to Jack's Beam Reflexor, their conversion to PlayStation All-Stars is much the same. Only the Buzz Blades fire 3 shots at once and have a greater range. The Buzz Blades also appear in one of Ratchet's taunts where they lock up, and then Ratchet touches one of the blades and pricks his finger.
Tesla spikes are the ultimate defensive weapon. One spike is effective. 2 or more, and they're outright lethal. When some goons approach you, try throwing a few Tesla spikes. Deadly electricity will flow between each spike, destroying nearby enemies and protecting your hide. The more you throw, the more protected you'll be. Tesla spikes, available only at RYNO.
As that states, the Tesla spikes were miniature Tesla coils that could be laid down to create deadly electric current drops for Ratchet's foes. This became one of Ratchet's more defensive abilities in PlayStation All-Stars. They work much the same as their original appearance, except Ratchet can only have a maximum of 2 out at one time, unlike the original appearance where you could go nuts and throw loads out everywhere. It's not one of Ratchet's more useful abilities due to the need for 2 to be effective, and how easy they are to destroy. Throughout the franchise, Ratchet has called upon a number of autonomous robot helpers to help him cause destruction. The first of these was the Glove of Doom, which chucked out 3 giggly killer robots that would kamikaze their way into enemies. These fellas got an upgrade in Up Your Arsenal and became the Agents of Doom, and now they could shoot enemies, as well as their usual kamikaze method of saying hello. So these cuddly little things became part of Ratchet's PlayStation All-Stars arsenal as well. Ratchet can throw 3 of them out and they will happily waddle across the stage until they hit something. Very useful for creating an opening in your opponent's defense so you can start battering them with your wrench or other such tool. But the agents weren't Ratchet's only assistant.
Mr. ZURKON is the perfect companion for spontaneous treks through hostile alien environments. Uh-oh, looks like these guys are hungry for Lombax soup. Well, not to worry. Just deploy your Mr. ZURKON, and he'll target any hostile entity.
Mr. ZURKON is looking to kill you.
Ain't he eloquent? Mr. ZURKON, available only at RYNO.
Yes, this is Mr. ZURKON, a floating killbot that follows Ratchet around and provides backup. He's also very talkative, and is keen on letting enemies know that he's looking to kill them.
Mr. ZURKON is here to kill. Mr. ZURKON make death or stinky aliens. I shall let you live, little alien. Psych! Mr. ZURKON lives only to kill. Why you hide, stupid aliens? Mr. ZURKON only cares for to kill you. Watch this. Watch some more.
He was introduced in Tools of Destruction and carried over to a crack in time because of how well received he was. And because of that Mr. ZURKON love, it's natural that he appears in PlayStation All-Stars. Ratchet will call him out where he'll hover near and fire shots at opponents. He doesn't have the range or power he does in the original games, but he still retains his menacing and hilarious taunts.
Mr. ZURKON is back. Mr. ZURKON destroys all enemies. This mission is inadequate for Mr. ZURKON. Why do you taunt Mr. ZURKON?
Mr. ZURKON also appears in one of Ratchet's intros and also in one of his taunts, where the two discuss seeing good holo films like The Destructive Gentleman they are. And then there's this thing.
The Sonic Eruptor. This genetically mutated xenogoat is the perfect weapon for crowd control of a destructive nature. Firing the weapon at a group of enemies will unleash a deadly and destructive mating call. For added kick, try squeezing the trigger when the Xenagol's lungs are full. The Sonic Eruptor, available only at Grummet.
Yes, this is one of the sillier Ratchet & Clank weapons. Yes, it's a creature strapped to a trigger, and yes, you make it burp by squeezing it. Ratchet & Clank is that kind of franchise. It's in Ratchet's PlayStation All-Stars arsenal too, and it's just as silly. That said, the charging method is different since its appearance in A Crack in Time relied on you timing your button presses with the creature's breathing, while in All-Stars you merely hold the button for an appropriate length of time. Speaking of silly weapons, let's discuss Ratchet's throw, which, quite frankly, sucks. Okay, fine, here's the Gadget trying to help this lady to explain it in a less silly way.
Gadgetron's suck cannon can vacuum up multiple enemies, then fire them out as high-caliber missiles. Caution, enemies must be small enough to fit inside the barrel.
Yes, this is the Suck Cannon, an unusual weapon that is essentially a vacuum cleaner crossed with a bazooka. In the original game, you had to suck up small enemies who would be stored in the barrel as living ammo that could be fired at a later date. The upgraded version in Up Your Arsenal also allows you to suck up crates to really stack up the damage. It appears in PlayStation All-Stars as Ratchet's throw move, allowing players to suck up their opponents and chuck them about, creating havoc when Ratchet decides to use it to stick his opponents between him and a wall in just the right range for the RYNO, which we'll get to later. The Suck Cannon also pops up in one of Ratchet's winning poses, where Ratchet wields it in a similar pose to how he appeared on the US cover of the first game. When visiting Metropolis and Ratchet & Clank in pursuit of Captain Quark, more on those in a later video, Ratchet & Clank met up with Big Al, a robot technician who provides Clank with a Helipack upgrade. The Helipack allowed Ratchet to glide, perform a special high jump and a long jump, and was generally a pretty cool tool to have around, which is why it made appearances in every Ratchet & Clank game ever since, and why it's in PlayStation All-Stars, giving Ratchet the ability to glide.
Ah, here they are. Your father's hover boots. Ready for your first lesson?
In A Crack in Time, Ratchet also gains the hover boots, a pair of jet boots that allow him to speed around and give him another way to glide while Clank is absent for much of the game. Ironically enough, their ability to make him hover is minimal. Except in PlayStation All-Stars, where they make an appearance when he uses certain moves such as the Plasma Striker that allow him to hover and aim the weapon in midair. Throughout the series, Ratchet could obtain a number of different types of armor, and a chunk of them became costumes for Ratchet in PlayStation All-Stars. His default outfit in PlayStation All-Stars is taken from Tools of Destruction, which wasn't an armor, it was more just an outfit, and as such doesn't really have a name like most of the other items we have on show today. Two of the alt colours of this outfit are based on the Commando suit, which Ratchet wore at the start of the second game, and Ratchet's default appearance in the first game, although in PlayStation All-Stars he wears a yellow shirt, but in the original game, he was shirtless. The remaining alt colour is based on the Holoflux armour from A Crack in Time, which was the basic armour Ratchet started that game in. It's also, confusingly, an outfit in its own right. The alt colours for that are based on the Ectoflux and Thermoflux upgrades from the same game, while the last alt colour is less clear in its origins, but may take its colour scheme from the Omni Wrench as opposed to a specific armour. The final outfit is called the Commando suit, but it technically isn't, as that outfit, as stated, is one of the default alt colours. Instead, this appears to be based on the Commando suit's first upgrade from going Commando, the Tetrafiber armour. The alt colours oddly appear to be based on armour sets from the PSP game Size Matter, specifically the Wildfire, Hyperborean and Crystallix armours. Now, before we move on to the supers, let's take a quick look back at all the moves we've seen so far.
Level 1!
Ratchet's hyper-destructive level 1 is the RYNO.
What's a RYNO anyway?
Rip ya a new one.
What did you just say to me?
RYNO. Rip ya a new one.
Why, that's the most powerful missile launcher in the galaxy. I know it's worth a lot of bolts.
Yes, the RYNO is a mythical device that I have limited file footage of due to how hard it is to get. There were several versions of this mythical weapon, often described as a combination of a rocket launcher and a Gatling gun, obtained in a number of ways. Here's the Crack in Time version, the RYNO 5, also known as the version we're most interested in. Let's watch Ratchet destroy stuff while I explain it some more. During Ratchet's PS2 era, the 3 versions of the RYNO were obtained through earning obscene amounts of bolts, and in some cases were only available by entering a New Game Plus. During the PS3 era, this method changed, requiring you to collect sections of a secret holo plan and giving the assembled plans to a smuggler. And yes, the gun is playing the 1812 Overture by Tchaikovsky. It's just that awesome.
Now that was extreme!
Level 2!
Ratchet isn't the only one to get some action in the games. Throughout the series, Clank gets his own sections, usually in locations that Ratchet can't go, such as a heavily polluted landscape or on the other side of a gap that Ratchet can't fit through. His gameplay was typically more puzzle orientated and often featured you guiding around little robot buddies to provide assistance. And then, in Tools of Destruction, the robot buddies were replaced by mysterious beings known as the Zoni, and they gave Clank an ability that hinted towards what was to come, the ability to manipulate time. In A Crack in Time, Clank finds himself on the Great Clock, a massive temporal control centre designed to keep time travel anomalies in check, and it turns out that Clank was designed to be its caretaker. Because of this, he gained the Chronoscepter. Let's take a few lessons to learn what it does.
Lesson 1. I'm going to teach you how to manipulate time. That Chronoscepter can be used to create time bombs. Try using them to get across to the other side.
Time bombs weren't what you think they are. They were compact balls of quantum energy designed to freeze time around them. They could be used on fast-moving platforms to get across them safely, or they could be used to slow down enemies to make them easier to deal with. Speaking of dealing with enemies, let's move on to Lesson 2.
What is Lesson 2? Temporal manipulation via faster-than-light particle acceleration?
Actually, I'm going to teach you how to hit things with a big stick.
Yes, the Chronoscepter also had a weapon function, activated simply by hitting enemies with it. It's not quantum physics to figure out how it works, let's be honest. Why is all this relevant? Well, because for Ratchet's level 2, Ratchet himself takes a backseat and his backpack buddy takes over with his Chronoscepter and time bombs. The time bombs slow down opponents if they get caught in them, while the Chronoscepter has gained the ability to kill.
Level 3!
Ships are an important part of the Ratchet and Clank universe. In fact, the duo joined forces initially because Clank had the ignition system Ratchet required for the ship he was working on, which he then promptly crashed. The duo then gained a series of ships throughout the game, which Ratchet then promptly crashed. Tools of Destruction, Ratchet hijacked a few ships at the beginning of the game, and then promptly crashed them. And then when they crash landed on the former Lombax planet Fastoon, this happened.
Clank, you see that? It's an old ship.
Very old, it would seem.
To fix her.
After repairing the ship, we discover she's named Aphelion, and she became Ratchet's ship for the rest of the series, although he did promptly crash her at the beginning of Crack in Time. The ships, including Aphelion especially, also had a gameplay element. Throughout various games, the player was able to fly the ship in a few space shooting missions. The ships have always had two primary weapons, a fast-paced laser weapon and guided rockets. This has been the case whether you're flying around asteroids and going commando, escaping pirates in Tools of Destruction, or just cruising through the galaxy in A Crack in Time. So, Ratchet's level 3 brings Aphelion into the action. These two primary weapons became the weapons that generate kills for Ratchet, although the rockets are no longer guided. But there are some other things to note here. Take a look at the HUD that crops up when you use the level 3, and now take a look at the HUD for the ship sections of A Crack in Time. This is an interesting choice because Aphelion in the introduction is clearly the model from Tools of Destruction and not the Zoni modded version seen in A Crack in Time. Also, the intro of the level 3 seems to be taken from any time you'd step into the ship from Tools of Destruction, with a zoom in on the monitor and everything. Before we finish up, let's take a look at one particularly noteworthy outro for Ratchet, which is named Ha! Nice try. In this outro, Ratchet spins a gold bolt on his finger. But what is this? In the Ratchet & Clank series, bolts are a form of currency, and the gold bolts are huge secret bolts hidden in secret places. They unlock a variety of things, but finding them all is a challenge. To celebrate the challenge of finding them, there is always a small victory animation, and this victory animation was copied over to PlayStation All-Stars. Another taunt features Ratchet throwing his wrench around, which is something he would often do as an idle animation in the original games. He also attempts this for a losing animation, but fails. Speaking of losing animations, usually when Ratchet died in his own games, he'd go faint, spin around, and topple over. This animation is referenced in one of his losing poses in PlayStation All-Stars. So there we go, that's Ratchet. Hope you've enjoyed this look into the last of the Lombaxes, and I'll see you next time for another character. No prizes for guessing, however. You pretty much already know.
Program terminated.